Hi guys, starting with a couple of announcements here. I will be releasing a new book somewhere around the end of next month. The title is Men, Math, and Marriage, a collection of essays for men in a post-marital world. A little bit about it. I've written some 700 essays in the last 10 years, so I've decided to package what I think is the very best of them, the most effective at delivering red pills, into a book. I've been very busy recently sorting the essays out and spending time with each one to freshen them up. The idea here, of course, is to make use of my writing in a way that supports my efforts. But I also think this is going to make a great gift to men who are still wandering around in the gynocentric desert. I think, like the Red Pill movie, it will provide them an intellectual map, a way out, in one sitting. And of course, the softcover version, with the cover art done by Maurice Alliger, will look good and inviting on your coffee table. So, I'm giving you some advance notice. I will, of course, be plugging this mercilessly in the days ahead, but I wanted to give you a heads up and let you know that the book is on the way. And in other news, the lamestream media has fired the first shots over the bow of ICMI 19 with a smear job from The Guardian linked below. In this particular piece of yellow journalism, they attack me pretty viciously, of course, which I've come to expect, but they also go after other conference presenters like Janice Fiamingo, Sargon of Akkad, and MP Philip Davis. I have a feeling this one is going to heat up a good bit before it's over. A link to conference tickets can also be found below. And with that, I'm going to do a reading for you of an essay I did some time ago. This one will be in the book that I'm going to release next month. I wanted to give you a little taste of that before we get going. Originally, this essay was dedicated to Royce. And for those of you that have been around the manosphere long enough, you know who Royce is. Royce is no longer on the scene in the manosphere. His website's been taken down. But alas, I do have a dedication for this. Instead of dedicating it again to Royce, I'm dedicating this reading to Rollo Tomasi. Okay, so you want to get laid? Here's how you do it, assuming there's nothing fundamentally about you that women find repugnant. Smell clean, put on some nice clothes, get in the proximity of women, and then ignore them. When they come to fuck you, and they will, shut up and let it happen. Sorry, but there's little else to it. Women are wired to respond to men who walk with enough self-confidence and involvement in their own lives that they don't need to invest any energy into bagging girls. They attract women naturally. There now. I just told you in 85 words, and could have cut it to 50, everything anyone ever needed to know about scoring. Unfortunately, the great majority of men have a really difficult time getting this, largely because they don't have any real confidence to project. It's been sucked out of them in this gynocentric world, and it shows at its most glaring every time they get in the presence of women. The big problem here is that the pussy-attracting magic of indifference can only be feigned convincingly by a minority of men, which is why we have PUAs, or pickup artists, out there in abundance teaching men how to jump through hoops, trying to get women's attention and move in for the score. Read that another way. It's pussy begging. Bullshit. Don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against the high-profile PUAs and advocates of game. I also have a healthy respect for people who can sell designer lint removers with fossilized whalebone handles for $200 when a patch of masking tape and some common sense would work just as well. But it must be said that all these salespeople are targeting a similar demographic. Ignorant, gullible customers. And in the case of PUAs, they are exploiting the loneliness and isolation of mostly young men who suffered a lack of male role models, and therefore a lack of confidence. I must admit that making a living at that could be called an art, and probably should. It's a special kind of art. It's con art. I think in a way that those guys do us a lot of good, though I wish I could say the same for their followers. The men's rights movement, something at which they sometimes like to take a lot of pot shots, it's that wannabe alpha dog thing, benefits from their work. I look at it this way. Red Pill Life, the grown-up version, is where a lot of game advocates and PUAs end up once they get some whiskers and disabuse themselves of the misguided notion that getting laid is something you need to work at. Overcoming their denial can be tricky, though. The conversation usually goes something like this. MRA. Man, you don't need to do all that work to get laid. PUA. But hell, man, I get pussy, and I feel great about myself. Can't you tell? MRA. Well, I hear you. I'm just saying that there's ways to get there that don't require work on your part, and they leave you feeling good enough that you don't need to try to convince anyone how good you feel. PUA. What are you talking about, man? I get pussy. I feel great. I am awesome. MRA. Well, bless your heart, that's wonderful. But what I meant to say was that you don't need to do all that chasing. More gynocentrism isn't a healthy answer in a gynocentric world. PUA. The more I chase, the more pussy I get. MRA. Don't you think that a one-track mind on sex can be dangerous? I mean, given the times. PUA. Man, you're never going to get any pussy talking like that. Well, it's not much to work with, is it? And I'm not really suggesting that anyone try. The men that end up here after being introduced to the manosphere via PUA and game sites don't need to be fished out of the cesspool. They tend to walk out of it on their own, as would anyone who would not be gamed by gamers forever. But the ones that remain and make it a lifestyle are just too enslaved to imagine red pill freedom, and likely not bright enough to learn what it means. They are literally institutionalized by their own desires and cannot imagine setting foot outside the city limits of Snatchville. The unquestionable black hole that exists in all these men is the place that should have held their core values and self-respect. And I must say, after interacting with a few of them, their core values and self-respect, along with their integrity, are lacking. Anyone who attempts to make an art form of passing a shit test has only succeeded in eating said shit and advertising themselves to the world as a shit eater. Oh yeah, I know, but you get pussy. Too bad such unfortunates seem oblivious to the fact that refusing to even participate in a shit test will have the same effect as passing one, except that it might help to eventually hook you up with a woman slightly less likely to yell rape the first time she gets pissed at you or to cut off your dick while you're asleep. And anyone who believes in tossing negs concocted for the purpose of aiding in the score only does so because they don't realize that by living by your values that you don't retreat from, one of them being that your self-respect is worth more than borrowed time in a vagina, is the best neg you could ever hope to toss. But hey, if you like begging, eating shit, and life with no values, the Chateau has room for you. And that is it for this talk, gentlemen. As always, I do hope you've enjoyed, even if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.